Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. We are presented by Gatorade on this Friday. Dave Revson, Elena Shklar. We were hoping for the All Big Ten championship matchup. Didn't quite get that in volleyball, but an entertaining night, and 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
Absolutely. And right now, Nebraska is playing their best volleyball of the entire season. They've only lost 1 set so far in this entire tournament. Wisconsin's fantastic season comes a little bit short, but they fall to a very, very strong Texas team. Super excited to see Texas and Nebraska.
We're going to break down both of the semis, and we'll get you ready for the championship. Biggest keys from Elena. But let's start with last night. That is our big story. And the Huskers made efficient work of Pitt. Nebraska sweeping its way to victory in an absolutely dominant effort. They trailed for only 4 rallies in the entire match, were never behind in sets 2 or 3. They're into the final for the 11th time. They will face former Big 12 rival Texas. The Longhorns ended Wisconsin's season with a 4-set win. Badgers captured the 2nd set, but Texas really dominated from there, with the Badgers winning just 29 points in the final 2 sets. So the title game is set, Nebraska and Texas for all the marbles. Sunday, 3 Eastern. A remarkable run continuing for the Huskers. They would tie the school record for wins in the NCAA era with a victory. Reaction from both Big Ten teams, starting with John Cook and the victorious Huskers.
I thought this would be a really, really tough match, and I knew we'd have to play great to win. But I thought our team, we talked about winning some close points. There was some ugly volleyball. We found a way to win a couple points out of that. And then I just thought our serving and blocking and defense really put some pressure on Pittsburgh.
There's a lot to celebrate. There's a lot to be proud of. And I know these guys are. And, it's a bittersweet moment, because I know they thoroughly enjoyed playing with each other and for each other and the fan base and the university. But that's sports, and they have nothing to hang their heads about. It was a great year. It was a great year, and we wish we had a few more days with them, but that's the way it goes.
It is indeed, and we'll get to Wisconsin in just a moment. But Elena, let's start with the Huskers. Were you surprised by how easy they made this look?
Absolutely, because Pittsburgh is a fantastic team. They're one of the best defensive teams in the entire country. But when you watch the Huskers take them on, you would have thought that it would have been Nebraska. That was 2nd in the entire country in blocks per set. But what Nebraska did so well is that they outblocked, they out-defense, they simply outplayed Pittsburgh, and they were dominant from start to finish. That was the best all-around match that I've seen them play this entire season, and that's saying something, because they have been dominant all season with only losing 1 match.
We talked about in the build-up to this match yesterday. We were previewing it, and one of kind of the notions that was brought up was you had 2 defensive teams, 2 teams that were really good at the net, and kind of what would sway the game. So in your opinion, kind of what swayed it? Because we did see, Pitt certainly had its moments up front. What do you think ultimately tilted it towards Nebraska there?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The biggest key going into this matchup was going to be who can win the defensive battle. Both of them are fantastic defensive teams. And from the get-go, Nebraska was handling Pittsburgh up front at the net. They had 8 blocks in the first set alone, finished the match with 15 blocks. Becca Alec had 10 of those. They just weren't giving Pittsburgh's offense any opportunity to get going. And then their own offense for the Huskers was running a masterclass. Harper Murray and Bergen Riley just connecting on a different level. So I think what really did it for the Huskers was they stepped up and they beat Pitt in their own game, which is that blocking at the net. But then they also had their freshmen step up offensively as well. Pittsburgh's plan was to slow down Merritt Beeson, and they did a fairly good job of it. She was still a fantastic match, great from the service line, but it was outside hitter Harper Murray that went off and really led the offense for the Huskers.
It's crazy to think no seniors on this team, right? I mean, we wondered all year, would they be impervious to this pressure, or at some point would it get to some of these younger players? And to this point, it hasn't. Now, you've still got a national championship game on Sunday, but it just feels like this is a group where there is no spotlight that shines too brightly.
Absolutely. And I think from that stadium game back in August, from that 92,000 match, once I saw that team play there with 4 freshmen with significant playing time, I felt like they could play in any spotlight after that. And that's what they're proving so far. I think the biggest question mark around this team the whole season has been their youth. But time and time again, those freshmen show up and show out in big moments. And that's what is so impressive, is that they go in these high-level moments and they've proven that they can beat teams that are maybe more physical than them, teams that are older, veteran teams. They've proven they can beat them. And when you have a youth like that and then the talent they have, that's a scary combination.
It is amazing to think. John Cook is 89-19 in the NCAA tournament. Like, it's just staggering to think about a win percentage that high when you are facing the best teams in the country. I mean, 89-19 is a great regular season win percentage, right? But I mean, to think about it in the NCAA tournament, it just tells you how good his players have been through the years, but how good he is in these situations too. Was there anything kind of strategically that Nebraska did that really stood out to you last night?
I think, first of all, John Cook is one of the best coaches in the country for a reason. He was named the National Coach of the Year. He's been here many times. So we talk about the youth of this team, but when you have John Cook leading it, you can't question them too much. But what they did so well last night was actually their scouting report that their assistant coaches put together. They were locked in and looked so disciplined on their block. We haven't really seen that all season. From the get-go, they knew they were reading Rachel Fairbanks, the Pittsburgh setter, extremely well and making sure that the second they knew where that ball was going, they were getting there quickly, closing that block and putting up a wall so Pittsburgh hitters couldn't get around it. So honestly, the story of the match was that defense, and that all comes from that scouting report, that preparation beforehand. When you have John Cook at the reins, he's going to prepare his team for these big moments. That's exactly what they did. This team just looks scary right now. This is the best volleyball I have seen them play all season long, and this is the right time to
We call
peak.
that very good timing. Yes, fifth time in the last 9 tournaments they will have made it to the finals. Again, they're going to take on Texas. We're going to look at it here through the lens of Wisconsin, obviously, and then we'll, at the end of the show, get a little more on the Longhorns and the matchup and the challenge they present for Nebraska. This was an amazing year for the Badgers. They fall a little bit short of their goal. It seemed pretty even there, the first 2 sets, and then, man, Texas just turned it on. What did you think was the difference?
I think you're absolutely correct with that. Wisconsin had a fantastic season, so this is nothing for them to hang their heads on. Obviously, they wanted to get to that national championship match, and that's what they had their mind set on. But this Texas team had a game plan, and they executed it beautifully from the start. And it was honestly just all Texas for most of the match. That 3rd and 4th set, they ran away with it, and that game plan was to serve tough and take away Wisconsin's biggest strength, which is their offensive balance. When you serve tough and you can't get a good pass, you can't get your offense in system, you become kind of one-dimensional. That's unfortunately what happened for the Badgers. They became super reliant on Sarah Franklin, who's a fantastic player, not a bad player to be reliant on. But when you are such an offensive balance-based team and they take away that strength, that's when you're going to struggle. And Texas had 11 aces. Maddie Skinner with 6 of them just had great service pressure, and then they were also hitting lights out the entire match.
11 aces for Texas, 11 service errors for Wisconsin. So you kind of see that certainly the serve tilted very heavily in Texas's favor. We were talking before the show, and you were saying they really went after Franklin. It was amazing how many of the serves went in her direction. So strategically, what's the rationale there?
That's a really high risk-reward strategy, right? You're going after the Big Ten Player of the Year. Sarah Franklin can not only kill balls, but she's one of the best passers in the country as a 6th rotation player. And in this matchup, Texas, their strategy paid off. They were going after her. And the point of that is to serve every ball at her because they also know she's going to be attacking most of the balls. That's going to wear down a player no matter who you are. Sarah Franklin, in my opinion, is the best player in the entire country. That's going to wear down anyone. And when other players aren't stepping up to pass as well, that puts all of the pressure on her shoulders. So for Texas, that's a really risky move to try to go after the best player on the team, but it did pay off, and there weren't many other people stepping up for Wisconsin.
I thought it was interesting, too, Wisconsin, not just Kelly Sheffield, but the players afterwards said, hey, they just played really well. and they gave a lot of credit to Texas. And it doesn't, to your point, it doesn't diminish what Wisconsin did, but they just caught Texas on a tough day. Texas was really good.
In the end, that's all it comes down to, right? It's who's going to be the better team on that day. Throughout the season, I would have put all my money on Wisconsin. But in that matchup against Texas, Texas simply outplayed. They were more physical. They attacked from the service line, and they owned that matchup. That's nothing for Wisconsin to hang their heads on because Texas is a phenomenal team, led by 2 first-team All-Americans, Asia O'Neal and Maddie Skinner. And then head coach Jarrett Elliott is also not new to being in a Final Four.
Yeah.
So nothing to hang your head on if you're Wisconsin. I have no doubt they'll be back.
We'll have more on the Texas-Nebraska matchup, but just a final thought on the Badgers season, like your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, like I said, nothing to hang your head on. I mean, that's a 30-win season. You're the only team that has beaten Nebraska so far this season. You got the Big Ten Player of the Year in Sarah Franklin returning next season. I have no doubt that they will be back in a Final Four position and competing for a national championship.
Again, we'll talk about the championship game coming up a little later in the show, so Elena will be back. As we continue, she's going to give us a sneak preview of the hoops last night as seen on the Big Ten Network. 23rd ranked Wisconsin in control throughout against Jacksonville State, winning it by 15. Bounced back nicely from the loss to Arizona over the weekend. Badgers got it done inside. They outscored the Gamecocks 40-20 in the paint. They're now 8-3 on the year. Andy Katz is with us. His Friday visit, you can set your calendar by it. Good to have you with us. We're going to talk a little bit about the Purdue-Arizona game a little bit later in the show. We're going to get to that. We've got a number of ranked teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, Purdue is the highest ranked one. You're going to be there tomorrow. Yes. You got quite an odyssey planned for yourself. You'll give us details on that. I want to talk about the other ranked teams of the Big Ten and that game last night.
Wisconsin's ranked. Did you know that?
Wisconsin is ranked, so it's an interesting jumping off
Not a voter
here. What did you make of Wisconsin? We saw them get a little overwhelmed by Arizona, which I think is understandable, particularly on the road, but they'd had a really good week prior to that. What did you think of the bounce back, and where do you think the Badgers stand right now?
First off, they're winning the games they're supposed to win. That hasn't always happened. It hasn't happened for every team in this league. So that's important.
Right.
Put that game behind them, the Arizona game. They weren't going to win it. They ran into a buzzsaw. Arizona's really good. We'll talk about them later. The fact that Blackwell and Storr have infused energy with this group has been a major plus for Wisconsin. Stephen Krall is playing at a higher level. Tyler Wall is more consistent. The only sort of negative right now is Connor Essegian. And it's a defensive one.
It was crazy last night. I mean, literally got in the game for like 20 seconds and got
because he's not defending.
Right. No, I understand. He gave up a layup, but still, it was like, wow.
You know, right now, he's got to defend if he's going to get on the court. Now, what's the difference this year versus a year ago? And this has happened, I don't care what the coach, the school, when you've got players that you can hang over someone's head and say, look, if you don't defend, you're not playing. They can do that this year. Yeah. They couldn't do it a year ago. So I think the Badgers are going to be fine. I mean, they're a top 25 team. More importantly, they're a top 25 team in the net. They've got a great schedule. And, you know, they just got to continue. They got Chicago State next week. Got to take care of business with the games they should. And I think they'll be right in the mix to finish in the top 3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see how different it is, the way they're playing on the offensive end. And man, you know, we saw Stephen Krall stepping out there. He and Wall were great inside. I mean, last year, the big guys had so much trouble inside. It just felt like the ball ended up in Chucky Hepburn's hands on the perimeter late shot clock so often in games this season ago. And then the other thing that's crazy is they are a good offensive rebounding team. And it's not that they haven't had the personnel to do it in the past. They've just chosen not to do it, right? I mean, Bo Ryan, they didn't go after offensive rebounds at all, and Greg Gard a lot in his tenure. They haven't because they want to get set on defense and take away the fast break. It's been an interesting philosophical shift that I'm interested to talk to Greg a little bit about when I do games here later this year, because they're playing differently than they have in the past.
I would also say this about Krall. He's gotten better as the other bigs have moved on. You know, I mean, it's Edey and then it's everybody else. But, you know, you had to deal with Hunter Dickinson.
Right.
If you had, you know, obviously there were other bigs on other teams.
Chris Jackson Davis.
You know, even
we haven't gone head to head with those.
Or Labracha. I mean, there were other stronger bigs, and he wasn't ready for that last year. He is this year. And a lot of those guys are gone, so he
Yep.
can excel.
Right. You mentioned Chicago State. That's who Wisconsin plays next. Northwestern played them the other night, and it was really a shocking result. I mean, for a 25th ranked team in the country to lose to a team that was 0-65 all time against the Big Ten, it's one of the most shocking results that I can remember. It's akin to Eastern Illinois going in and beating Iowa last year. I mean, really, really stunning. And it pointed out, I think, like, can Northwestern still make the tournament? Of course they can still make the tournament, right? I mean, it's not a disqualifying loss. We saw Iowa do it a year ago. But it pointed out, like, this is not the same team as a year ago on the defensive end. They are not a very good defensive team right now, and Chicago State took advantage of that.
Well, I was just texting with Chris Collins this morning about it, and that, it was one of those wake-up calls where these guys essentially, they did answer the bell against Detroit, posted Purdue. So we can't forget there was a game after Purdue.
Right.
And they blew them out by 30. And so they handled their business there. What happened between Detroit and Chicago State, I mean, there was nobody in the building, no atmosphere, but you got to create your own.
Right.
And you got to realize, hey, we're ranked, we're supposed to win this game, but we need to play. And as I watched the news conference after, I mean, Boo Buie was saying, and so did Ty Berry, like, they're a Division I team. They have Division I players. They can beat you if you give them confidence, which clearly is what happened, especially late. Now, what does this mean? It's not the end of the world. They have 2 overall losses. They have the only win over Purdue. Their next game is against DePaul on Saturday.
Yeah.
DePaul, by the way, is at 265 in the net. Chicago State at 317. What can't you do is lose 2 games in that ballpark.
Right.
You've lost 1. Okay.
Right.
Take care of business in this next one. DePaul beat Louisville. Louisville is dreadful, okay?
Yeah.
But DePaul is more than beatable. So tension should be there with Northwestern. Take care of business. Put this in the rearview mirror.
Have one against Arizona State, kind of a semi-road
Don't
game.
look ahead.
Going down to Phoenix. No, I'm not looking ahead. They're not looking ahead. I'm looking ahead. What I'm saying is you got to win both those games, right? Their margin for error, to your point, has decreased. And if they're a bubble team, that loss can be held against them. You got to leave no doubt. Iowa left no doubt. They were an NCAA tournament team a year ago. Northwestern will have to do the same. Where are you with Illinois? Off for finals for the week after the loss at Tennessee. Great win, though, at the Garden against FAU. Now they're going to return back to action this weekend against Colgate. So I would say, we were talking about that Tennessee game. That was kind of a house money game last week. They didn't win the game, but where are you here with the Illini? I
think with Illinois, you're going to get what you're going to get from Terrence Shannon, which is an all-American type performance.
One of the best players in the country.
Marcus Domask, what are you going to get? You're not going to get 33 every night. Are you going to get 6? I think it's somewhere in the middle. Coleman Hawkins was hurt, came back, has contributed. He needs to be consistent for them. And it will come down to, their ceiling is going to come down to their point guard play. Quincy Guerriere, I think, will give him what he needs to give him. But is it Ty Rodgers? Is it Justin Harmon? Who's going to be their lead guard late in the game to play off and distribute with everyone else? I'm not worried about Illinois. I'm not worried about Wisconsin. I think that's your top 3 right now.
Yes, I agree.
Obviously Purdue.
Yes.
So that's your top 3. They've got the resumes. I think, believe it or not, everyone's all skies falling at times. I think we've got a better chance of seeing higher seeds of the better teams than we did a year ago. Remember, it was like Purdue, and then there was a big drop, and everyone was in like 8-9s.
7s, 8s, 9s.
Yeah, in tough first round games. I think we got a better chance to see Big Ten teams advance of the top ones.
A lot happening between now and then.
I know, I'm just saying.
But I hear what you're saying. Look, I mean, Purdue was a 1 seed, unfortunately, last year. We saw what good that did them. But again, part of the onus on the Big Ten this year is, can you make deeper runs in the tourney? We're going to get you ready for tomorrow's action next. These could help some of the seeds. Really, the last marquee non-conference day of the year for the Big Ten. There are a bunch of great games. Andy will be at a couple of them. His keys coming up. Back with me, we're going to talk through some of the biggest games for this weekend. There are some enormous ones, but no bigger than the one that will happen in Indy as Arizona, the number 1 team in the country, takes on Purdue. So you got 2 of the top 3 teams battling. You're going to be there. What are you watching in this one?
First of all, it's the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, Big Ten team for Arizona. Already beat Michigan State in Palm Springs. beat Wisconsin at home, and now they've got Purdue. But they're joining the Big 12, not the Big 10. Listen.
Squashing any rumors.
Yes.
Yes.
This is going to be more than likely decided on the perimeter. I think Zach Edey, even though Omar Ballo, this is a different kind of big he'll have to deal with because he's long, athletic. He will cause some problems for Edey, but I still anticipate Edey getting his. So now the question is, Braden Smith, 27 in his last game. Does he meet the challenge against Caleb Love? Caleb Love has been playing great. Remember Caleb Love, North Carolina, played for the championship 2 years ago. At one point was going to go to Michigan, ends up at Arizona. He has elevated his game. This will be a major test for Smith and for Lawyer and for Lance Jones and Miles Colvin. You would think Purdue will have the de facto home court advantage.
Right.
But this is going to be a very telling game. I think it's going to be a Final Four-esque type game. Both these teams are trending to be 1 seeds. So this is the kind of matchup we love to get, and we're getting it in Indy, 4:30 Eastern Time on Saturday.
You think about how rare games like these are. I mean, this is only the 7th time in the last dozen years you'll have 2 top 3 teams playing in the non-conference in college basketball. So this is a huge game. Obviously, if Purdue wins it, I think there's a really good chance they end up back as the #1 team in the country.
I don't think no qualifier.
Yeah,
they're #1 if they win.
Right. It feels that way. They've only beaten #1 twice all time. Purdue. One of those wins was against Arizona, so we'll see whether they get it done. So that is the second of 2 great games in the state of Indiana, and
Are you discounting Ball State, Indiana State before that?
Indiana State is really good, by the way. He's done a fabulous job.
That's the appetizer before Arizona, Purdue.
Yeah, that's a guy to keep an eye on, like years down the line as a potential Big Ten.
The Valley's Jokic.
Head coach. All right, so the #2 team in the nation, in the state of Indiana as well, and you're going to be checking out Kansas and Indiana, the jet-setting life of an Andy Katz. This is I think is a really big game for IU, just to play well. I mean, obviously, if you can win, it would be huge. But man, they really got just rolled over after the good start against Auburn. What are they going to need to do against familiar face Hunter Dickinson and Kansas?
Yeah, first of all, in their 2 biggest games this year, Indiana has been sort of steamrolled against UConn in the Garden, which is understandable, and then Auburn and Atlanta. So now you've got your last big test for Indiana. This is a game that Indiana desperately could use. It's not make or break. They are 2-0 in the Big Ten right now. Khalil Ware is going to have a great game against Hunter Dickinson. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Indiana fans treat Hunter Dickinson. I say that because I was at the Illinois-Kansas exhibition game, and it bothered him because Illinois fans got on Hunter Dickinson.
He didn't play well in that game.
No, he got chippy.
Yeah.
I will not be shocked if, it does get him a little on edge, even though he's played really well since then. He's going to have to really check his ego and be locked in. Now, DeJuan Harris is playing great at the point. That's a problem for Indiana. Xavier Johnson, there's no indication he's going to play. So they are inexperienced there. I think Trey Galloway's going to have to make threes. Mike Woodson's already said he doesn't mind the shots they're taking. They're just not making them. He thinks they are a better three-point shooting team than they've been able to show. Yep. But Cup, Galloway, they're going to have to make threes. But I think, and I was there a year ago, when they beat Carolina, I think we're going to see that kind of atmosphere, 12:30 in the afternoon in Assembly Hall. I think it's going to be off the charts if they can harness that, if they can use what could be a 5 to 7 point bump because of that, then they got a chance.
They'd have to defend the 3 as well. Kansas shoots the 3 really well, and that is not an area where Indiana's excelled. Beyond the arc has not been a great thing for Indiana on either side of the court. Michigan State, they are desperate for a non-conference quality win. They're desperate for a win of any kind, but a non-conference quality one would be particularly sweet. They get Baylor in Detroit. This is certainly an opportunity to get a good one.
Again, Michigan State has whiffed on every chance, which normally doesn't happen. They obviously usually have a ton of these opportunities. This is the last big one for Michigan State. It comes against a team that they match up well against, but Baylor's guards, especially the freshman guards, are just playing better than Michigan State's experienced guards. Inside, Jonathan Chama-Chachua, who's an experienced guy, who's been there forever. He's not a big-time scorer, but it's going to be hard to keep him off the glass, and that's been a major problem for Michigan State is they get basically nothing out of the post.
Right.
So their guards are going to have to rebound. The veteran guys, I mean, I got to believe this week in practice, Izzo has reminded them about, you know, sort of the pride about Michigan State, but they got to get this game. And Michigan State, when have we seen them at 79 in the net this late in December, and Baylor's number 5? I mean,
right.
This would be a major game for them.
It'd be a huge game. Look, there are no bad losses so far for Michigan State. I mean, you know, there's no shame in losing to Nebraska. I think a lot of teams are going to lose at Nebraska. The other 4 teams they've lost to are all ranked. But at some point, you have to show that you can beat someone, right?
Yes.
That you can beat people who are in the field. We talk about that as we get to March. Who'd you beat? Who's going to be in the field? Baylor's going to be in the field. So this would be a huge one for them. I'm interested to see how Ohio State bounces back. The loss to Penn State last time out where they had the huge lead and kind of fell apart there in State College, and give a ton of credit to the Nittany Lions for that. This is not the same UCLA team as last year, as you well know. What are you interested in here?
First of all, horrible scheduling by the Bruins, the fact they're going back-to-back weekends to the East Coast. Think about their travel. They were in Hawaii, and now they lose at Villanova, home, back now to Atlanta to play this game against Ohio State. So Ohio State will have the advantage. They should take advantage of it. I think they will be able to erase the 18-point deficit that they lost to Penn State. They're a much better team than UCLA. They've got the best backcourt probably in the Big Ten. They've had a week to sort of let it marinate of what happened. I'm not worried about this game, but it's also a game that they should get, they need to get to maintain where they are. You know, the Bruins, not in the Big Ten this year, but they're sort of aimlessly wandering through the schedule. They've not been able to find themselves.
It feels a little strength against strength. Ohio State's so good offensively. UCLA is always going to be good.
But they haven't been as good.
No, haven't been as
Young,
good.
international.
Right. And Ohio State is not as good defensively as they hope to be, and UCLA's offense has been a mess. I mean, look, they lost great players.
Yes.
Off of last year. Like, it's understandable that they are
They
a
have
team
the
in
rookie of the
transition.
year, Jaime Jaquez with the Heat.
Yeah. No, he's had a great start in the NBA, but you know, and Tiger Campbell and that. Big stat brought to you by Gatorade. Back to volleyball and some familiar terrain for the Huskers and Longhorns when they battle for the national title Sunday. Since 2000, these two have a combined 15 appearances in the championship match. Only Stanford has been there more. The Huskers 1 win away from the 6th national title in school history.
I think we all know that we still have one goal that we want. So yeah, tonight's a great win for us, but at the end of the day, like, Sunday is our goal. So we just have to stay focused on that and do everything we can to prepare for that match.
It means everything to me and this team. And I think freshman year, making it to the national championship was just insane and unreal to me. And I was a baby. I was the freshman on the team. And now being able to, last year wasn't a great season for us. We didn't make it as far as we wanted to, but we came back stronger this year. And I think making it all the way to the national championship again as one of the older players is just really incredible. And we've worked really hard to get to this point, and it's not easy to get to this point. And a lot of people don't see the work we do on and off the court. And we're excited to be here and pumped for Sunday.
Elena is back. What do we need to know for this matchup?
I think these two teams match up extremely well when you look at them stats and on paper, but when you go player by player, I think Nebraska does have the edge. Despite their youth, the way that they played against Pitt in that semifinal match is what is making me so confident in the Huskers right now, because they're a really young team, but they have proven that defensively they can win that battle at the net. That's Texas's biggest strength, is their defense. That was Pittsburgh's biggest strength, and Nebraska absolutely owned that. So going into this matchup, just like the two semifinal matchups, these teams are all defensive powerhouses. To make it this far in the tournament, you have to rely on your defense. So I'm expecting some really physical blocks, and whoever can win that defensive battle is probably going to come out on top.
Should be great. And again, you have two historic powerhouses. I think that always makes it fun. Is there an area that concerns you the most for Nebraska?
I would say just the way that Texas played last night from the service line. They absolutely attacked Wisconsin. From that serve, they were lights out with 11 aces, 6 from Maddie Skinner, and Wisconsin wasn't able to get their offense going. So I am a little concerned if Nebraska is able to handle their serve receive. They're led by Lexi Rodriguez in that back row, and then Lainey Choboy is also a fantastic serve receiver. So as long as they're allowed to control that serve receive, put the ball in Bergen Riley's hands and let their offense do their thing, and then win that defensive battle, I think they'll be pretty good. But on the other side as well, Nebraska needs to attack Texas from that service line, because when Texas is in system and they're able to run Asia O'Neal, who's the best slide attacker in the country, they're really dangerous. So you need to force them out of system as well.
This will be the third time that these two have met for the championship. Nebraska's won the prior two, including most recently in 2015. One other piece of Big Ten related volleyball news. This is breaking news. Sarah Franklin of Wisconsin, the National Player of the Year. This is a former teammate of yours, so I know you have special pride in this, but tell us what you're thinking here, Elena, with this award.
I'm just so proud of Sarah. She deserves every second of this. The season that she has had this year is just unprecedented. She's put up kill numbers that other players are not, but what she does so well is her sixth rotation play. She's a fantastic serve receiver. She leads this team. And then if you don't know Sarah Franklin's story of her comeback of a potential career-ending injury and then being told she might never play volleyball, now she's back a National Player of the Year.
That is remarkable. That as recently as this summer, she wasn't sure if she'd be able to play this year, and she's Player of the Year. All right, great stuff, Elena. Hope we're talking about a national championship on Monday.
I hope so.
We will see you then.